welcome to the Get Over Yourself podcast. This is author and athlete Brad Kearns discovering ways to be healthy, fit, and happy in hectic, high-stress modern life. So let's slow down and take a deep breath, take a cold plunge, and expertly balance that competitive intensity with an appreciation of the journey. That's the theme of the show. Here we go. Don't feel bad if you're one of these people who are extremely deficient aerobically. You just haven't trained that energy system well, and you need to deserve the highest level of your potential, and protecting your health and having longevity will all be accessed with a sensible approach that's been proven for 60 years since Peter Snell that the aerobic foundation is essential. My best score is a 128. I shot a 78 in 47 minutes, that's 125, in the California Championships 2 years ago, and I got third. And that was a 78's a good round for me. I mean, if I took all day, I could shoot 78, but I was moving really quickly and just kind of in that Zen peak performance mindset. I was in the flow. These things like mindfulness are coming into the athletic realm now, where we're seeing that the human can develop in a way that's aside from how many miles you're putting on your bike and on your shoes. Let's talk about ancestral supplements. If you're into ancestral health, primal paleo, keto, you know the importance of consuming these unique agents contained in bone marrow, in the nose to tail organ meats, liver, kidney, all that stuff, the great bone broth benefits. Well, how's it going? For me, since years ago when Dr. Kate Shanahan asserted the importance of these wonderful nutritional benefits that you can't get elsewhere, not too good. I don't know how to cook a liver or a kidney, but now your problems are solved forever when you go to ancestralsupplements.com, a wonderful company filled with people who are living the dream, walking their talk, and bottling up the purest, cleanest sources of grass-fed organ meats, kidney, liver, bone marrow, all in these wonderful capsules. I dump them in my smoothie every day. I'm healthy. I don't have to worry. It's an incredible dietary boost. And this is so different from swallowing a bunch of those synthetic vitamins in those giant bottles from the big box stores. Highly questionable health practice. This stuff is the real deal. Grass-fed organ meats, pure as can be. Ancestralsupplements.com. Hi, listeners. It's Brad to introduce a very special show with my friend Tawnee Prazak. It's kind of a hybrid show because we were going to do a recording for her Endurance Planet podcast talking about all the important, wonderful matters of endurance training. And then I was going to sit with her and interview her for the Get Over Yourself podcast. And what we ended up doing was just talking for quite a long time and throwing in bits and pieces of each of our ambitions for the type of show we wanted to talk about. But the special part for me was I haven't seen Tawnee in a couple of years. The last time I was down there at her beautiful home in Laguna Beach, overlooking the Pacific Ocean, we did some breezy video interviews for the Primal Endurance course and got all her expertise about training and special considerations for female athletes, all that great stuff and the important matters of the day. And since I last saw her, Tawnee has been through a great personal ordeal, family tragedy, a journey of healing and recovering and coming back to the public eye and sitting back down to record podcasts, which is her wonderful career that she's been doing for so long with Endurance Planet and has built such a wonderful following. So Tawnee and her husband John lost their newborn daughter Whitney after a full-term pregnancy and childbirth. Understandably, at a very difficult time processing the pain and the grief, and Tawnee was very open and vulnerable, sharing her feelings with her following on social media. She took a leave of absence from her role as the host of the Endurance Planet podcast. The couple did a lot of traveling. They lived the van life for a while, exploring the United States, hitting the road. Tawnee plunged into a deep immersion into healing and practices of meditation and Buddhism and personal growth and working on herself and trying hard to pick up the pieces and move on with life. So I was overjoyed to walk in and see these guys after a couple years, and she's well pregnant right now. They have big plans ahead. They're going to get back in that van, explore more of the United States, going to head to another state to have the baby for several months, and then who knows what the future holds. But she's back on the airwaves with her awesome Endurance Planet show. Go over there if you have an interest in endurance training, and especially listen to her Welcome Back show with our mutual friend Brock Armstrong. Wonderful discussion, and boy, she is really sharing an important and evolved and thoughtful perspective for such a young lady. She's only in early to mid-30s. Interestingly, the endurance community that Tawnee and I have both been a part of for a long time might be accused of having a high-intensity, high-strung, type A approach to pursuing peak performance goals, getting a little bit caught up rather than getting over themselves and needing to work through some of these challenges of having that greatest strengths of your devotion and discipline and focus and intensity also coming back to bite you and becoming your worst enemy when you have a flawed approach to peak performance goals. So here's Tawnee overlaying this incredible personal journey and tragedy and healing and pain and suffering, and coming back to the plate and trying to get motivated and refocused on the nuances of heart rate training. So something for all of us to reflect upon is that critical balance, that delicate balance between pursuing your goals with a passion and living a purposeful life, and also not sweating the ups and downs and realizing that pain and suffering and tragedy are inevitable in life, and you have to deal with it and move on and try to work on yourself and be the best you can be. So enjoy this hybrid discussion between Tawnee hitting me up with the talking points for the endurance audience, and I think for the broader audience too. I'm talking about trying to preserve testosterone levels as you age and still pursue peak performance goals, but not overdoing it and not getting into these ruts and overtraining patterns. We hit the diet aspect toward the end of the show, where we're talking about the various factions and all the controversy and trying to take a sensible, reasonable approach to healthy eating. I think you'll like that part. I also get in some plugs for my Speedgolf passion and my cold plunge, and it's back and forth between this heavy stuff of what Tawnee's been through in her life and her reflections, and then some practical discussion. So it's hard to pigeonhole and define this conversation distinctly, but in the spirit of the evolved medium that is podcasting, I hope you will get an interesting and thought-provoking conversation between two people trying to lead a healthy, balanced life, pursue peak performance goals, and be happy. Tawnee Prazak in Laguna Beach, getting ready for her road trip.
Welcome back to Endurance Planet. This is your host, Tawnee Prazak Gibson, and it's always a pleasure when I get to do shows in person with my guest of the day, and that is the case right now. This man has been on the show before. It's actually been just over 2 years, a little over 2 years since we sat down the last time. So with me today is Brad Kearns, who now has his own podcast called the Get Over Yourself podcast, which sounds amazing. I think we all need to take a little dose of that. You can check him out at his website, bradkearns.com, which we'll link to in the show notes. And we're also going to hear about the speed golfing thing that he's...
Whether you like it or not.
He seems to be pretty damn good at. And
Thank you for asking, Tawnee.
He uses math for.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Brad, thanks for coming down.
I'm so glad to be back. Yeah. It's fun. In person is the only way to go. We're trying hard, so I brave the rainy roads of Orange County to make it here.
It's a real thing in Southern California when people don't know how to drive in the rain.
Yeah, if this were Seattle, it would be like we'd be recording outdoors.
Exactly.
Oh, it's nice on the porch. It's just a drizzle. Yeah, let's put our hats on. So
that's what I noticed.
So much to talk about,
too. So much to talk about. Since the last time that you were here. So, I want to hear a little bit about the inspiration for your Get Over Yourself podcast. Because seriously, it's such a central theme I think we all need a little bit more of in our lives. It's just get over ourselves. Don't worry so much.
We deserve to.
Yeah, not worry so much about what other people think of us and all that.
Right. This dates back to my racing career as a triathlete, 9 years on the pro circuit. And it was so intense, and just the lessons of success and failure learned in such a dramatic manner manner. And we talked about that a long time in our previous show. You can go back and listen to that about how I won this race and lost that race. But that was kind of the biggest lesson I learned, was when I had this misdirected competitive intensity and was too driven and too focused and too hard on myself and wanting so badly to succeed that I wanted it too badly, and I attached my self-esteem to the outcome of the events. That's when I struggled and suffered and got away from my ideal peak performance disposition and just got knocked down by the high competitive circumstances of racing as a pro, where, you can make excuses, but you don't get paid unless you come first, second, third, fourth. Everything's so graphic that you really had to process a lot of failure and finally learn that, a pure motivation is better than an impure one. Mm-hmm. And if I was able to get over myself and then just go out the door because I love the challenge, win or lose, but, keeping that competitive intensity when it's time to race and preserving that throughout life, and we'll talk about that with the Speedgolf and into present day. You've got to have something that gets you up in the morning, gets you pumped up, and gets you psyched up, but you have to apply the proper competitive mindset. Otherwise, you're going to struggle and suffer, and it's going to be a much more difficult road than if you get over yourself and you realize that, you're not the center of the universe, especially when you're doing something trivial like a recreational participant in endurance sports, which most of our listeners are, and those of you going for the Olympics for your country, you still deserve to get over yourself.
Yeah, it's such a good lesson where sometimes I know even, with my deal of health issues I've been through, I feel like the universe kind of forced me into that mindset where I wanted to be, the person qualifying for Kona, winning whatever, and just, that was not necessarily in my cards, and it was a humbling thing, but I think in a way, it was a blessing in disguise to sort of learn those lessons, especially early on, and how I carry them into my approach now.
Oh, dang, I'm thinking back to our pal Maffetone, and after, I think we recorded for like 6 or 7 hours one day. Of course, I went out there in person, out in the middle of the desert in Oracle, Arizona, where I used to live, and I remember we were going down this thread for a long time, and finally I was kind of getting... I was getting exasperated because the answer wasn't clear. And I'm like, well, then if you don't need to train that much anaerobic muscle fiber and you don't really need to train the brain to suffer, the brain can suffer at any moment, and you shouldn't do that much volume of aerobic training, then how do you distinguish between the winner and the guy in the middle of the pack and the guy at the end of the pack? And he goes, genetics mainly. I'm like, holy F, you're kidding. But it was such a beautiful answer because you're dreaming of Kona and you're training so hard and you got all the gadgets and the right coaching. You're heading out there and you're doing what you're supposed to do. And someone got first and you got 7th, or you got 2nd by a nose outleaned at the tape, or you got 87th. Dr. Lindsay Taylor talks about this a lot on Primal Endurance podcast. This is maybe what's meant to be, and that's a fabulous, wonderful victory for you to improve your time from the previous performance in that thing, or to be able to say, hey, I got off my ass because 2 years ago I was smoking, overweight, had health risks, and now I'm a finisher of the race. So when I used to put on that triathlon, Auburn Triathlon, the last person would come in, and sometimes they'd come in 30 minutes after the previous last person because they'd refute our cutoff times and stuff, and they got the warmest welcome and everyone cheering and giving them a leftover age group award because it's like they won something themselves too, but we're just so conditioned to judging and measuring ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So so let's talk about the Speedgolf thing, and especially kind of what we're already talking about, like getting over yourself. I'm kind of curious. I know you said you've been dabbling in it for, sounds like a couple decades, but you're taking it a bit more seriously. Like professional level? Good
question. Oh, yes, I'm in the professional Speedgolf ranks, which is to say that there's not that many competitors out there in the world. But it's this wonderful grassroots sport, very strange, where you go out and have a golf tournament, right? But they're also timing you. So endurance listeners, it's pretty fascinating. It's the greatest sport in the world because you go out to the course. They start the time. It's a time trial format like Tour de France, where you start about 5 to 7 minutes apart. Otherwise, we'd be hitting each other in the head, like trying to race through the course. No, it's not that silliness, but you have your own, tee time, and you go off and you try to complete the course as fast as you can. So they count your strokes. So you're not doing like this hockey puck thing, like, just blah, 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 hitting the ball. You're trying to score a good score and complete the course in a good time. And so at the finish, they add it together. So if it took you an hour to play the course, 60 minutes, and you shot 80, your Speedgolf score is 140.
Okay.
So if you were to say get careless and miss a short putt, That just cost you a minute of running. And I can run an entire par 4, 350 yards in a minute, right? So I don't want to rewind the clock. I want to make these good putts, shoot a good score, but also keep that, it's basically anaerobic threshold pace for me. So it changes the sport entirely from
like biathlon.
It's exactly like biathlon. Because if the biathlete, biathlon in the Winter Olympics where they're skiing cross country, they stop and shoot at targets, they ski again. If they miss one of the targets, they ski a 200-meter penalty lap every time they miss. So it's like, you better be a good shot and not, you want to go ski, just go ski in the ski race. Same with golf. You want to go on the tour and shoot 64, that's great. So this is like a blend between fitness and golf, but also you're out of that over-analytical mindset it ruins golfers' experiences, and they're just in their head all the time, and they have all these clubs, and they're not very good anyway. It doesn't even matter what club you pull, because we carry only a handful of clubs, and so we have to hit all these creative shots with the only clubs that we brought. We don't want to be lugging a huge bag along, because the time factor. So I've been playing it for many, many years, and now it's kind of had a resurgence in the last 5 years. They've held a world championships annually, and people come from all over the world. And so I've placed 20th, 19th, and 17th in the last 4 world championships. So I'm up there, but the guys at the very top, they will shoot par on a championship course and complete it in 45 to 50 minutes. My best score is a 128. I shot a 78 in 47 minutes. That's 125 in the California Championships 2 years ago, and I got third. And that was a great. 78's a good round for me. I mean, if I took all day, I could shoot 78, but I was moving really quickly and just kind of in that Zen peak performance mindset. I was in the flow because no matter what, you got to move on and hit the next shot. So if you hit a bad shot, you can't be crying about it or adjusting your grip or talking like, what do you think happened there? I came over the top again. Golfers do that for 4 hours while they're waiting, and it's boring, and it's so different to be out there in the flow state and trying to hit good shots.
So how do you, coming from the triathlon background and, the mistakes, if you want to call it that you made in your earlier years.
Life lessons.
Yeah, that's a better, more appropriate way. How do you keep yourself from going to that mindset where it becomes so outcome oriented, or the numbers, the scores that you're talking about, the rankings, like you get a taste of, podium and all of a sudden you get a little greedy with it. How do you keep yourself from keeping it chill, keeping it zen?
That's what it is, man. That's a good question. We should have video, because when your eyebrows raised up and my eyebrows raised up, I'm like, that's right. You get that taste. And then you start effing with your head. Like, if I'm this good just goofing around, oh boy, could I do better? And on the last show, I talked about when I was a rookie on the circuit, and I was having so much fun. I was so glad to be quitting my lame-ass accounting job and riding my bike all day and going to these races, and I'd get 18th, and it was so awesome because I was only 7 minutes behind Scott Molina, and then I progressed naturally, without even worrying or thinking about it, or without even wearing any sponsors' clothes. I was just running around in a bare skin, doing these races, and then I had these great victories at the end of my rookie year on the professional circuit. And then I said, oh, well, now if this goofy approach has got me this much success, now it's time to go out there and get serious and get my program down and write all the things in my charts and monitor my heart rate and my speed on the loops and all that stuff. And then I went down that path where I had to extricate from over and over, where I was getting too intense and misdirected competitive intensity on the bike trail in Southern California when some doofus passes you wearing sneakers and you're riding your brand new. Back then, it was like $3,000 bike would be really impressive if I said my brand new $3,000 racing bike, and now it's like
10K plus.
Yeah, had no idea. Incredible. Anyway, so it's pretty easy now because I'm an old dude and I'm not going to these events and there's ESPN there wanting some interview time with me while my sponsors are looking and doing, now it's just for fun. But I want to make this important point that it's really healthy and I think really valuable in life to maintain this competitive intensity throughout life with whatever you're doing. So I've found this goofy sport of speed golf to make that my competitive outlet instead of, reminiscing and sitting back and telling stories about how I used to race triathlons and now I have a giant gut and I like to watch the NFL all weekend, drink beer. Yeah. That's, to me, not to judge that, although that does sound judgmental, to me, that's not healthy. So I want to do whatever I can do right now to be the best I can be and have some competitive challenge that literally, if I'm doing it right, it means as much to me as it did when I was at the national championships on professional circuit, but it's different different parameters. But that's interesting because it doesn't matter. To me, it means everything. So when I finished, I broke the world record in the single hole of Speedgolf. We can talk about that as like the offshoot of this tournament I just described. And, when I finished that hole, I think it was like the best athletic performance I've had in my life, just based on how I prepared and had this one day that I was going to do a peak performance effort. And it felt like winning the Coke Grand Prix when I was on the professional circuit. It was the same level of satisfaction. I didn't get the $44,750, but that's okay. I got the smiles from my family and, good times on YouTube. You can go look at the video.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I feel like even with the age component in endurance sports, it doesn't seem that a lot of people like, oh, well, I'm old, so it doesn't matter what I do. I think people get just as wrapped up in their times. It's because it's such a type A kind of sport where... That's right. I don't know if it's nature nurture kind of thing. Like, is it the type A's that are geared toward endurance sports? And so even at ages 40, 50, 60, 70 plus, it seems like people have that potential to get just as unhealthfully obsessed with their performances and numbers and data, where letting go of it a little bit might serve them better.
Right. I mean, there's this category you just described. People are going for the podium and competitive. They got no problem with missing competitive intensity. As I described, the people on the couch drinking beer and watching NFL for 9 hours straight, we might have a conversation with them to say, hey man, why don't you try to make something of, use your body and try to be physical and delay the inevitable demise of aging doing something. But then we have this other group that's more likely to be listening to the show where they are jacked up, man. They are fired up and they got this goal and this goal and this goal, and 17 of them relate to their career where they're jamming, and the other 9 relate to, their multi-sport endurance goals, and then hopefully 2 or 3 with the relationship, kind of keep that going. And that's why I open it up on my podcast to talk about a lot of health and fitness and peak performance. And I have Peter Attia and Ben Greenfield and the leading physical performance and biohacking people. But I also have relationship experts and talking about a bigger picture than just being your physical best and eating this and not eating that, because I think we've talked that to death. I mean, if you want to ask me what the healthy foods are in my refrigerator, I'm going to gag myself while I'm talking, because it's just gone so overboard. And then we're forgetting these big picture items. So back to that. I mean, this is like the ultimate question that we should be, hashing on the show here. It's like, okay, you have your competitive intensity, you're doing good, but how do you kind of keep that in balance and in perspective?
Exactly.
And I'm going to venture to say, speaking from former, elite athlete competing at the very highest level, when I settled myself down and realized that you can turn on that competitive switch and then turn it right back off after the race is over and smile and have fun. And the Australians were the best example of that. To make a broad generalization, these people and their culture down there, sport is intertwined in the culture. They're outdoors, they're active, they're healthy. Like 90% of them live within 2 miles of the beach or something?
Yeah. And
look up that stat if I'm wrong.
Doing the surf ski and
they do everything, and it's
stuff,
all part of life, and they're so competitive, and they would pop off all the time and brag and do these cocky statements that an American wouldn't be caught saying because it doesn't sound modest enough, But it was all out on the table. Like, oh, mate, I'm going to blow your mind today in the swim. I'm swimming so strong in workout. I reckon I'll get 30 to 60 seconds on you tomorrow out of the water. And we're not talking like that. We're saying like, I feel okay, but my left shoulder hurts a little bit. Like kind of diffusing this overt competitiveness.
Sandbagging.
That kind of crap. Faux real. So if you were kind of transition out of that and imagine for a second that it was okay to compete, like I'm going to give you a Roger Bannister quote too. Like he said, the essence of sport is while you're doing it, nothing else matters. But when it's done, you generally file it away in a place not very important. That's not the exact quote, but I put the file cabinet in there because right now, like I finished racing 24 years ago, and all my race results are in this brown folder in the very back of my file cabinet. I could pull it out and I could look and see what I got in Bud Light USTS Phoenix in 1991.
Before the Athlinks days, right?
Right now it's like, now there's an archive. Oh my gosh.
You don't have to do anything and it's there.
Yeah. But it's like when that day came and I was in Phoenix racing, it meant everything to me. And I'd worked so hard and tried so hard to get to that point. But I also won, let's see, 4 races where I was disqualified after, sometimes 2, 3, 4 hours after the race. I received a phone call when I won World's Toughest in Lake Tahoe. It was an 8.5-hour ultra distance run over 3 mountain passes and 20-mile trail run, the hardest race in the world. And I won. Then I went home to take a nap, and then someone called. I thought it was a crank call. I kept asking which one of my friends was doing this to me. And so the victory was taken away from me.
Why?
With a phone call. The road was open to traffic because they couldn't close down a road for hundreds of miles in a resort town, right? Mm-hmm. And so the rule was obey all traffic laws. That means you have to unclip and put your foot down at every stop sign. Gotcha. Sure, I understand. Pro athlete meeting, I got you. So I was escorted the entire route by a CHP officer. So we'd come up to an intersection, and he'd blow his siren, and I'd blow through at 20 miles an hour. So I got a huge advantage from, the guys who had to put their foot down on the stop sign. But I argued, like, I should have got the lawyer. John, could you come in for a second? That's Tawnee's husband. Here he is, our legal representative on the show. I'm like, wait a second. I had a police escort. Are you telling me Barack Obama is breaking traffic laws when he's running the reds on Pennsylvania? No, I broke no laws. Ask the cop who kept me company for 5 hours. I went crazy, But the reason I brought it up is, like, the victory was taken away from me, but was it really? I mean, I did it. Right. I participated. I had the best race. I had a great run. I was really strong. It was a wonderful day. My family and friends were there. But the fact that I was an official disqualification person, you have to learn to process that and realize that the value and the richness of the experience was what happened, whether or not someone decided to DQ me. Yeah. The best victory speech of all time in triathlon. Andreas Bozell, I give you credit, from Vail or Aspen, Colorado. He was awarded the win at the award ceremony. The next day, he was 15 minutes behind me. It was an ultra, so he was respectful of my performance, and he said, "Sorry, Brad." That was his speech. I loved it. Yeah.
Sorry, Brad.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, you're right. That can't take away the experience that you had and the fact that you were the fastest on the day. Because even had you stopped, I'm sure that was not 15 minutes worth of foot down.
That was also in my legal argument. Like item number 4 was like, can you penalize me 12 minutes for that horrible transgression? Yeah. Yikes. Didn't fly.
But I hear you. I mean, the DNF that I had at Ironman Tahoe. Gosh,
it got cold or something?
6 years ago. No, it's a long story. We don't need to go into the story itself.
It's on episode number 14.
It's somewhere in the archives. It literally is. But the swim that morning was still like one of the most memorable moments of my triathlon career because it was snowing outside and there was talk for days that the race was going to be canceled or shortened or something. And for anybody who woke up and went swimming in Lake Tahoe that morning, I mean, that in itself was a victory. So even though the day didn't work out, how I imagined it, I really honestly now, like years later, I'm like, that's one still stands out to me as a really important event in my life, even though it had a kind of that tag of like DNF next to it. But hey, that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes there's probably races that I did better at that were not even that as memorable. It's just those certain experiences. So putting yourself out there.
Putting yourself out there is big. And I think we were talking about before we started recording, like, it's tough to strike that balance. Because if I'm coming off like, oh, Brad said you should be loosey-goosey at the races and get over yourself and have fun and all that, you can run yourself into trouble that way too. And I'm guilty of like having an overly positive approach and disposition to life. And so I always look on the bright side, whether there's a family crisis or whether I got fired from a job or I didn't achieve the goals that I set for and tried really hard. And I'm like, oh, that's all right. At least I'm alive and I can see the ocean from your beautiful view here. And that's in itself, for me, I identify it as like a coping strategy to not really face reality and face the shit that I need to dig myself out of, including, let's say, getting my ass kicked from in an event where I wasn't really training appropriately. I wasn't doing enough swimming or whatever it was, or dealing with a personal family crisis. Mm-hmm. You got to face that. I give you a lot of credit for getting out there and communicating with the world, pain and suffering. Instead of saying, hey, everybody, it's sunny again today in Laguna Beach, so all is well in life. And maybe that's not, that's a tough it's tough to try to put on that smiley face. Deepak Chopra said that being effusively positive is a form of stress in itself.
I'm reading one of his books right now.
I totally identify with that.
Yeah.
Like being overly positive is a form of stress in
Because
itself.
you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and I think at the cost of ignoring what is actually there. And that's something that I've become intimately familiar with in the past year, is recognizing, honoring, and touching, you know, so to speak, everything that's there, whether good or bad. Because if you don't, it's still going to be there, and then you're not dealing with it, and then it could come out in other ways that are not necessarily appropriate, effective, you know, for your well-being.
You carry shit on a backpack. Yeah. You said touching on the Brock show too, like that meditation term, which is beautiful.
It's you know, because I went to that meditation retreat, and it's one of the things that I visually, you know, even though you're not literally touching anything, but to me, it's such like a good visual like or idea of how this all works when you're looking at your mind and making sure that you're not seeing yourself as your thoughts or feelings, but rather that's just, you know, they're there and you can touch them and then you can let go of them kind of vibe. And it's that mental image that you can create for yourself that helps you realize like you don't have to be trapped by your thoughts, but you also at the same time can't ignore whatever's there. So it's an interesting, and that idea of being too positive, I think it's more the rare side of things. If anything, people are probably a little bit more too on like the negative side about things, like, you know, oh, my life sucks, this is what I don't have, I'm not as fast as this person, rather than
if you're type A and you're, you know, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You're most likely in that other category.
You would think that being the more positive guy would actually be the goal, but really it sounds like you're still kind of missing the bigger picture of what's there, yes?
Yeah, I would say it's a stepping stone, the way you're describing my life now, because I was that super badass competitor who ran himself so hard in college that he got sick and injured 4 or 5 seasons in a row, pneumonia, mono, stress fracture, shin splints, chondromalacia. You know, I just ran myself into the ground because I was willing to kill any of these guys any day so I could be a great champion runner and realize my dreams and have my self-esteem continue to, you know, climb from all that bullshit. And then I had to become like I had to pull out the class clown part of my personality and have as much fun as anybody and be the lighthearted guy on the circuit who would be laughing and joking as we walked down to the water's edge. And Mark Allen had the stare on his face that, like, you know, he was not present in the world with the rest of us because he was so focused. But for me, something else worked, and I was able to, you know, cope with the stress in that manner. But then if you kind of tiptoe too far over that direction and you're always positive and upbeat and cheerful all the time, no matter what, then you're not really in close touch with your emotions, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're not touching anything except for the pretty blue sky and puffy clouds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan Millman, you know him, Way of the Peaceful Warrior, listeners? Go order on Amazon Way of the Peaceful Warrior. It's the best book I've ever read in my life. I've read it probably 15 times. I used to read it once a year through my 20s and 30s. I probably haven't read it in a while. He's got many other books after that. But he said, live your life as if you were watching a great movie where you cry the tears of joy and the tears of sadness, and you feel all this range of emotions, and then you get up and get out of your seat and walk out of the theater. The movie's over. So the day's over. The race is over. The frickin' year of 2017, which sucked, or 2018 or 2009, you're forgotten about it, and you lost your fortune in the real estate crash. It's over, and it's time to, you know, feel the full intensity of it, and then move on and carry those lessons with you, so that hopefully you don't repeat the same mistakes or the same negative thought and behavior patterns.
So I had an interesting conversation with a friend who's a Buddhist on this whole idea of like letting go and moving on. Because
those guys don't know. They don't know what they're talking about. Oh, excuse me.
Why would I know?
Why should I listen to you? Why are you so freaking happy, man?
Because I was struggling with that component with my own story. You know, everybody knows about our loss at this point. But, you know, in my mind, I'm like, why should I have to let go and move on from that person that was our first child? Like, that sounds ridiculous to me to have to say, like, well, 2018 is over, so time to move on. And this is something I've been dealing with, like, kind of at the end of the year into this new year. And he explained it to me in a way that made a lot more sense, where his first question back to me was, well, why do you need to let go? You know, so this whole idea of letting go is an overly simplified way to explain something that is much more complicated. And it's not so much about trying to erase a memory or erase a bad year or erase a certain occurrence of any kind in your mind, because whether you like it or not, that memory is always going to be there. Whatever happened to you in 2009, you lost your fortune and were on the streets, that's always going to be a memory in your head. You can't forget that. You lose a loved one, you're always going to remember that loved one and then whatever the circumstances of their death were and how you felt afterwards. And it's not something you should move on and let go from. But with the idea of meditation and mindfulness, the idea of desensitizing ourselves to the reactions that we have when we think about that is the key. And that's kind of where in lies the idea of letting go, is just allowing yourself again to this like touching your thoughts and feelings process, doing that repetitively enough where we start to not have such a strong emotional reaction to whatever that particular event or thing is in our life that causes us pain and suffering. And I've seen that directly in my own circumstances. If I hadn't have done the work I've done in the last year, I think I would still be somewhat of a wreck. But I knew that this work was the key to my survival. And so that's the idea of your reaction and attachment to the thing is what is meant by this whole idea of letting go.
That's heavy, girl. I love that. I mean, it's sort of, you have to live in acceptance instead of denial. Yeah. And that doesn't mean smiley ass face like Brad Kearns mistakenly thought for here and there. Yeah.
It doesn't. It's kind of, it's a very like raw way to deal with life.
And therefore, the most meaningful and rich life possible is to be present and live in acceptance rather than denial.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But then, do we want to get triggered every time we see a tall guy with a beard because you got dumped when you were 23 by a tall guy with a beard? No.
That's the thing. Like, I think if you continue to think about the tall guy with the beard when it
with
comes
the
up in your
Maserati
mind,
and the
whatever the
7-bedroom home overlooking
example,
the bay in Hawaii.
The more you allow yourself to think about that when it comes up, the less reactive you will be to it over time.
Oof.
And hopefully then maybe instead of having that intense blow up reaction every single time, maybe it's only, 25% of the time that you have that.
Right. You allow it. It's okay. Yeah. I suppose that would be like what a therapist is working on, I got dumped so many times, two-timed, and all those emotional traumas. Yeah.
I know. So yeah, I didn't really mean to go down that path because there's actually.
I know we have all these practical questions to talk about, but this is how we roll sometimes. It's going to be a syndicated show, by the way. This is why we like to sit down and get together rather than talk about my testosterone levels on Skype, which are also of great interest to endurance athletes. But just so we can transition smoothly, this stuff is so incredibly relevant to, let's say, your peak performance goals and your mechanical approach to training that that's one of the most important messages I have to share too.
Are you talking about the mental mindfulness?
Yeah, the stuff in your life. Mike Pigg, you heard of him? Top guy. I remember one time, getting up the courage. We're in the hotel room together, and he was writing in his training journal, which was 99-cent spiral notebook from the thing. And I'm like, "Hey man, can I see how you chart your workouts and stuff?" Sure, no problem. And I grabbed this thing, and it was like, how you buy the workout logs with the squares for mileage 6.3, time, how many weights, how many sets did you do of this workout, that workout, with all the blanks. His is like one line for these epic, insane all-day workouts that we were doing when I went up and visit with him.
Yeah.
It would say Bridgeville, Kneeland, 7 hours, left knee feels better. That was his extent of his commentary on this all-day long ride where you go 50 miles on pavement and 50 miles climbing these dirt roads in the backwoods of the Trinity Alps and finally making it back in the thick fog. I would have written a poem about the ride. It was incredible. But his is one line on Spiral Notebook, and the rest of it's man, these deals are still stressing me out, and I don't know if I should switch agencies. I kind of want to touch my sponsors more and talk to them more, but then I also like the fact that they're taking care of all the shit for me, and I don't know about this knee. It's been, personal, emotional things that he's sharing in a journal, like a diary. I'm not trying to be, impersonal, whatever, but I was like, oh my gosh, the level of importance from, he did his job today, right? What more are you going to say? Oh, you were 4 minutes faster this week. Who cares?
Or your watts,
Yeah,
like
it's all the drama and like
Yeah.
the fluffiness and the things that sometimes we traffic in when we're on the recreational level, and we're writing down our wattage meter and how fun it was. This was like we talked for about 10 minutes riding out of town, and then I got on his wheel and time trialed on his wheel, trying to stay there for 50 miles. We stopped at a convenience market, and I'm shopping for stuff. He's like, just grab anything, consume it, and we got to go. It was like a 5-minute stop for a 100-mile, 7-hour ride. But it was like, I'm telling these stories because like the awakening that I had, again, was like getting over myself and my little journal with all the things about, oh, the trail was flooded, so I went 1 mile shorter today than my usual loop. Therefore, my time was a little faster, but it wasn't really that much faster.
That would have been me.
Yeah.
And like, oh my gosh, I hit so many stoplights today, so I couldn't keep a good momentum going. So I would just have to slow down, and it'd take me a while to get back up to speed. Oh, yeah. You look for those excuses. It's actually one reason I give a very in-depth questionnaire when I start with an athlete or do a consult with an athlete. And it's not so much about what I'm not looking for numbers always, although, that is kind of somewhat a relevant thing. But it's more about what they want to share with me, what kind of what sticks out in their mind and what you're saying, like what Mike Pigg chose to wrote in his training plan. Like, that's a really important piece, I think. And those are the kind of things that matter. I love when people want to share, some more like intimate details about what's going on in their mind rather than just what their average wattage was.
Yeah, I got 3 girlfriends right now. I'm really busy and stressed, so I like to get out on the bike and just clear my mind after a Saturday night when I'm getting texts from one and the other. And I like to use that stuff against them like 5 months later. So when they write like goals, want to be a role model for my young children by finishing the Ironman and showing that I can achieve goals. And I'll come back and go, you know what? A 13-year-old girl stuck to her phone and a 12-year-old boy, they don't care about standing around for 10, 12 hours in Kona. They want to go and, go to the beach, and they don't care. They don't care if you finish or drop out. They just know and then love their dad. And then secondly, if you want to be a role model, why were you doing that neighborhood 10K when you had 101 fever? Is that a role model for what? For pushing your body in when you're ill to go and do something stupid?
Yeah.
So let's go back to your answers from 5 months ago.
That very much gets into like the Maffetone kind of stuff of like, we live in a society of no pain, no gain, and we're willing to, push ourselves over the edge when we should just be taking a rest day instead. And I think you and I both, even though we're 20 years apart, I think we're very much on the same page of like, we'll take that rest day at this point.
Yeah, I seem as goofy as a 30-something, and you're like as mature as a 53-year-old woman. But and we both look like
25.
Top, yeah, top form.
So I do want to talk about your math training experience, and you said was the Speedgolf. Did you say anaerobic or aerobic threshold that you're running?
Oh, this is 175, 180,
okay,
tough.
But you're training with math for that.
Yeah, because you can't go and do that. I mean, I play Speedgolf a lot.
Well, you can,
fortunately.
But the consequences.
Kill yourself. Yeah, I wipe myself out way too much because it's really hard to keep it math when you're going and playing Speedgolf. Funny, I'm running at math pace. Mm-hmm. I stop, get my club, swing and hit the shot. No practice swings, of course. And I hear the beeper. So like the physical act of swinging and hitting a golf ball will bump your heart rate up, and then you got to slow down even more.
So you have the beeper on your watch.
Oh,
too.
Sure, yeah, and it's a lot of walking, and then I'm kind of not simulating my tournament experience. So a lot of times I go out there and just blast around, and then it takes a long time to recover for me. And those episodes of high stress training, when we talk in context, and then people send me questions to Primal Endurance email, like they think in black and white terms all the time, like always train below your maximum aerobic heart rate no matter what, or you're a loser. No, that's not what we're saying. It's just that you got to push and challenge yourself to peak performance goals and simulate the competitive experience, but we just do it too frequently. So the baseline of having a base of training where you're training in a comfortable, non-stressful, minimally stressful manner, that's what helps you build to become a great athlete.
I think that's what Maffetone talks about a lot, is also then using the races as your higher intensity workouts, right? So you're keeping that balance.
Hey, how about that for an idea?
Yeah.
Just go race for your speed workouts.
But, for some athletes, maybe more of on like the novice end of things, how do you feel about that need to practice? Like, how often or how necessary is practicing those race intensities and training rather than just leaving it to chance, if you will, on race day?
Leaving it to genetics, like we said at the start of the show. That thing is so far stuck in my mind.
It has to be.
It's like the pat answer for everything. And I think there's a whole lot of truth to it. I mean, the people on the podium or whatever, especially if you look at the professional level, don't ask any of those people what they're doing and don't try to model any of that. I mean, the Brownlees are known for eating junk food, apparently. They eat their pastry cakes and their puff creams, and they've been dominating the sport for whatever, close to a decade. They're just a different organism. Same with Lance Armstrong. I spent some time around him, and he never got tired. He did these crazy corporate events all day long, and on the bike the next day, back shaking hands and signing autographs, and most people would be fried.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. So, forgot the question, but
me too.
The
no, about
so if you want to, you got to, you got to push yourself once in a while. There's no like formulaic answer here, but I would venture to say it's less than we think it is. And when you can turn in a really high quality session that you recover from well, then you can theoretically progress with your fitness over months and years. And I know Phil talks about that long timeline also, where you have to be patient. And if your maximum aerobic test right now is a 14-minute mile, we're going to help you. You sign up for Tawnee's coaching. She'll get you down to 12-minute mile in 1 year, maybe 6 months.
That promise,
well, I mean,
it's true.
If you're 14-minute mile as an aerobic athlete right now, that's not highly conditioned. You're going to get that thing down to 12, and then you're going to open yourself up to this world of amazing possibilities. But we get emails from people that say, my best half marathon's 1:37, and I just started this math thing, and my thing is 14-minute mile. Whoa, because 1:37's moving, man.
Yeah.
That's like 8-something, right?
If not 7,
so
8.
Don't feel bad if you're one of these people who are extremely deficient aerobically. You just haven't trained that energy system well, and you need to deserve, and it's the highest level of your potential, and protecting your health and having longevity will all be accessed with a sensible approach that's been proven for 60 years since Peter Snell that the aerobic foundation is essential, and that hacking it with a whole shit ton of intensity because you only have 4 hours a week to train is going to be highly problematic. It's going to get you to a certain performance level, and then you're going to suffer from breakdown, burnout, illness, and injury if you try to keep going down that path.
Right, I agree so much. So when you started math, I don't know what I was reading one of your blogs on your website, how you started off when you're doing the Speedgolf thing at a heart rate of 145 and quickly found that was, at your age, 50 plus at this point, overtraining territory. It didn't take long for you to start to see the signs of that, and you've learned enough by now to back off. So then you bumped it down to 130, which is more of your true math.
Yeah.
How was that for you, the transition into that true math zone, as far as your body and performing and moving? Was it a frustrating transition, or?
Well, I've dealt with this frustration since 1987 when I switched over to heart rate training. Yeah. And so, we were previously just blasting workouts, and there was no heart rate. The heart rate was invented. I got my first Polar in 1987. It was a rectangle. It's the size of an iPhone. So the frustration is a lot easier to process when you understand and realize this is the path. And then when I was a young person, my math heart rate was 6-minute miles. I could run a 30-minute. My best test for 5 miles was 30 minutes at MAF. So that was not too frustrating to run 6-minute miles. Now I'm 53 years old. I'm not in shape. I don't do endurance heavy competition except for Speedgolf. I'm 9-minute mile, probably a little slower now. It's a little frustrating to think back to the 25-year-old guy that could fly up the hills without the heart rate beeping. Yeah. And you just have to recalibrate, just like all your goals in life. You want to recalibrate in a healthy manner so that I'm not driven to catch up to the guy that passes me on the trail who's flying along. But in regard to the specific question, since I know I'm not good at answering specific questions, but in about 3 or 4 months, I was running the same speed
3 or 4 months.
I took it down from 142 was my beeper alarm to 130 because I suffered health problems and breakdown because I hadn't been really training in 20 years, and I started putting in a lot of miles on the golf course mainly because you don't notice the miles on the golf course. 18 holes is 5 miles.
Is it?
It's not like I ran 5 miles. I just had a fun time playing golf.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So it added up, and I fell apart. And then I realized that this ventilatory threshold calculation that's popular with the exercise scientists where they think that's math. For me, it's higher than math. Yeah. And so what's Phil's scientific rationale for that? Ask him. He made it up in the shower one day. He did. It just popped into his head. Yeah, the 180. He was thinking of like 220 minus age, and then was looking at the power source in the plug as 220. You know how he goes off. But he put this 180 up there and then started seeing people's gait change, right, when he was doing the evaluations of his clients. And when they kicked it up to the heart rate above 180 minus age, their gait would change, implying an increased stress, like a nonlinear increase in the stress impact of the workout.
Right.
And that's what ventilatory threshold does, is identifies when the type 2 oxidative fast twitch are suddenly recruited. You get change in brain function, change in MRI, you get change in respiration rate, and so it's like a what do you call it, a spike on the curve.
Yeah, like shoots up.
So something's happening at ventilatory threshold where it's starting to get measurably harder in a nonlinear manner, implying that maybe you should go up to that point and not over. But for me, the math calculation is way lower, 12 beats lower. And that's why you want to go on the conservative side if you got 2 different numbers and you're showing proof from your expensive lab test that you can train at this level. I know from practical experience that a lot of development happens at much lower heart rates than maximum aerobic heart rate even. So back when I was racing and I'm running 6-minute miles at math, I'm not doing that every single day because that's physically stressful to have. That's 300 pounds of impact trauma on each stride because I'm running a 6-minute mile. So I would do many of my runs at 115 to 120 heart rate, with my math being 155 and my racing heart rate being 180 for Olympic distance try. So I'm 60 beats below racing heart rate. On the bike, we'd spin around at 100, 105, 110 for many of the miles of that week. And then, of course, hit up that math on certain workouts, and then hit a time trial or a race also. So for the average listener, most of your exercise should be minimally stressful. And it can be way below math, which means a walk. And so if you go out and take a hike or a walk, you are getting aerobically fit. It's a proven scientific fact that directly translates into improved race performance.
I will never forget the year that I realized walking was beneficial. It was 4 years ago that I was like, this is the year of walking for me. I realized, okay, I get it now. Because for a lot of us athletes, we think it's just a waste of time. But there is something there. There is value there. And especially, we recently had a question on Ask the Coaches asking about incorporating walking into running and longer runs. And that's something Phil, when he was advising me for a marathon that same year, 2015, had me doing. He would have me walk for up to 20 minutes pre and post long run as part of, not putting so much stress on my body, but still being on my feet for longer durations. And it really helped, it was really interesting. And it's definitely clicked since then. It's something I especially give to athletes, in a more like injury recovery phase of their training, as far as like walking incorporated with running. But the other thing with you that was one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about too, I think a lot of our listeners will find, this to be an important conversation, was that back in those days, your triathlon racing days, your testosterone was pretty tanked, even with, the more MAF approach and sub-MAF approach, just the sheer volume and stress, and then the higher intensity of racing, it seems like it was pretty tanked. And now these days, even at your age, you've found the formula to success that works for you in a very natural way to keep your testosterone levels of what a 20-something-year-old male would have as his testosterone levels. So let's talk a little bit about, as an aging athlete, 45 plus or so. I don't really know when it starts to like tank for men.
Nowadays, what's the guy's name that has the whole business built around this? Christopher Walker, I think he is. Google him.
Yeah.
He was tanked at Duke University. He was a 0.
Oh, in college?
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. and they wanted to do surgery. They thought he had a tumor on his
scary?
endocrine system, and he toned down his triathlon training, started walking around campus, put away the pizza and the top ramen, and rebuilt his system naturally. But yeah, the breakdown and decline occurs probably in the 20s because our screens in our face too much.
But it doesn't mean you're screwed. I mean, that's the same thing we see with women too. Myself being a perfect example of having zero progesterone and estrogen and no period for years. It's a completely recoverable system, thankfully. And you have seen that now too, spanning decades, where your testosterone levels are from, what you've talked about on your blog and everything, wonderful at this point. So the interesting thing where, I want you to expand on is that you really found that the math training worked. Like, again, getting back to when you were running at 145 heart rate at 50 plus, that was overtraining territory. That was not good for your hormone levels. But as soon as you dropped it down to that 130-ish range, that's where the magic started to happen. What else besides that? Because I don't feel like that alone is, the secret to shooting your serum testosterone levels back up to 1,000 when they were, 100, 200, 300 prior.
Okay, going back, because you asked about, when I was racing from age 20 to age 30, and I'd test my blood all the time because my brother worked in the lab. It was great.
Oh, cool.
And, my testosterone was down on the low end of the normal male range, which is 200 to 800 for serum testosterone. It's now known to be much better to measure free testosterone.
Right.
So I'd rather have all the listeners concentrate on their free testosterone as well as the serum. But the serum testosterone is what's circulating around.
It could be bound to.
And it could be bound to the sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG. So you want to test that as well. And if you have high serum.
But lower.
Oh, you're doing great. Your serum testosterone is 700, and then you have a high SHBG, and you're going to have a low free testosterone. That's what's acting upon the desired organs and tissues, so that's trouble. So you can be in trouble even if you have a high serum testosterone. So, yeah, it was down in, 200, between 200 and 800 as a healthy 20-year-old guy who looked like he was fit and healthy, but I was only fit and not very healthy because I was constantly tanking myself. Interestingly, my career predates the days of EPO and the doping and endurance sports, but my hematocrit, the red blood cell count, would be around 42, 43 when I was healthy, and then I would tank down to 36, 37, 38. And when you're under 40, you're not feeling good in daily life. You're not feeling good at the office. But I would go through this pattern over and over because I'd come in and get tested when I felt like crap when I'd been racing and traveling too much, and there would be 37. So what I have to do is sit on my ass, eat a lot of hamburgers, and just wait it out. Pretty soon I'd start to feel better. I'd get back into training. It would come up to 42, 43 again.
But then you just rinse, repeat, and do the same.
Pretty much when you're racing on the circuit. I mean, there's ways to do it that are a little healthier, but it's a really, really tough battle, and that's why I like not to segue into or to what do you call it when it's an aside or a tangent? Not talk about doping, but like these athletes that are doing the Tour de France and doping their asses off so their hematocrit is pegged at 50, that's arguably a healthier way to get through the cycling season than doing what I did, was being Mr. Au Natural who didn't even want to take ibuprofen for 10 years. I didn't want anything in my body. I didn't want caffeine because I didn't want to feel...
No, that's pushing it.
I wanted to wake up and feel the level of fatigue I was at that day, so I'd make a proper train decision rather than get jacked up on coffee and then go out and do a group ride in the pack, because I felt like trying that was leading to trouble, 7 days down the line or 14 days, 21 days down the line. So I wanted to ride out everything, including headaches. I just go down and lay down in bed, which I highly recommend instead of a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. Just feel what's going on and do what you can do, unless you have an emergency almost. But so that's the background for just blowing out all your hormones and your blood levels because you're training too hard. So now, old person, the return to endurance training was not kind to my blood values, especially the most important, arguably, ones when you're at this age and you're trying to hang on and minimize that inevitable decline into aging. And people have shown they can do a great job with just lifestyle means. And possibly even drug regimens, which are becoming more and more popular.
Like hormone replacement therapy,
and I'm
prescribed by their doctor.
I'm super open-minded about that because I want to live a long time and perform really well for a long time, and so those are at odds, right?
Yeah.
Possibly for the most part or a half part. So I'm open-minded to all that, but I feel like it should be a last resort when you're doing everything right and you send your questionnaire to Tawnee and says, I sleep 8 to 9 hours a night. I have no stress. I'm doing that. I'm eating all these foods. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat bad oils. And then you have some bad values. You could probably explore that, but I want to do everything I can. And the reason I wrote that blog article about doubling my testosterone in 6 months or whatever is like, wow. I mean, I was alarmed when it was a hypo diagnosis. I didn't see a doctor. I did the blood test myself, but I was under the healthy range, below the healthy range for free testosterone, the important one. And they have different scales, so I can't say
10 to 20-ish.
Well, I've done different blood tests with different labs. There's like 3 different scales.
Yeah,
it's terrible because there's no comparison. I was a 4.6, and then another time I was 87. But the context is tough, except to say here's the normal range.
Yeah, and if it's in the same units, you could at least. I have a list.
You could probably figure it out, huh?
Yeah, if it's in the same units, I have a list of ranges that I keep that I've learned over years working with functional doctors. So when I see blood values, it's not compared to the conventional norms. Because conventional norms, quite frankly, are diagnosing sick people and they're measuring sick people. So those ranges are wider. We want a bit of a tighter range for optimization.
Right. The World War I soldiers, 12 or something, had triple or quadruple testosterone level to the Gulf War guys in the 90s.
Insane.
From wide range of subjects, right? Yeah.
If I have. So that was a wake-up call to you to see that as getting back to endurance sports, which, it's not a shocker that endurance training is not necessarily healthy for testosterone or any hormone levels. We've talked to athletes like Matt Bach, who went through his whole story of becoming low in testosterone and suffering from osteoporosis before he was even 30 years old because of his professional racing pursuits. We definitely know that these things exist. But what's the remedy for it? Because obviously we still want to be endurance athletes.
Right.
So for you, switching to the math, it seems to me like you talking about genetics, there's a little bit of that genetic gift for you that running at 130 heart rate kind of worked out relatively quickly for you to still get the stimulus you needed to run well and also hormonally respond well.
I think anybody will respond well to a healthier approach to training and knowing what you can take and you and only you, unique to your circumstances, and then assessing whether you're pursuing a strategic approach or you're just kind of blowing off excess energy with ill-advised workouts. And I think we're really guilty of that. We don't think intuitively and rationally about this stuff. We just want to stick to a predetermined goals or balance our largely sedentary lives with blowing off energy and getting outdoors and out of space. That's where the walking and the hiking comes in, or the easy pedaling, or something that's still giving you all those benefits that you're craving that you don't even know about, like getting outdoors and into open space. That's a human need. It's a genetic human need, but we kind of just breeze that off, and we're just looking at how many miles we're going to ride or what watts we're going to put out for this thing. So you can accomplish a whole bunch of goals by going way slower than you dreamed of, and you'll notice your performance improve. And it's been proven by the stories of many great athletes on the pro circuit where they slowed down and trained comfortably and turned in these top performances, whatever your genetics are. But then that question of like, how do we make sure we have healthy hormones and then also hit those target workouts so that we can compete well. And I feel like we are heading into a revolution in the fitness world and the endurance world where the training is no longer going to be, the centerpiece is no longer going to be burning calories and expending energy, but rather a more, broader like perspective, holistic thing where Joel Jameson, this guy in Washington who trains MMA fighters, his website is 8weeksout.com with the number 8.
The recovery-based
training. It's unbelievably. It's the concept is beautiful where you're all about what can you recover from and how can you get better at rest and recovery techniques. Brian McKenzie, a neighbor here in Orange County, he's into.
I think he loves Orange County.
He's all over the place.
Yeah.
I think he came back, then like whatever. But he's big on. We did a show. Go listen to Get Over Yourself podcast. It was a great show, and he talked about. I go, what's big with you these days? I don't need to talk about your box jumps. We all know that.
True, right?
We all know that he's done this CrossFit endurance thing where you can jump up on boxes and do CrossFit workouts and succeed in endurance sports instead of just going slow all the time. It's like an alternative approach that's been proven to work. But his big thing now is like breathing awareness and cold exposure and heat exposure. And, these things like mindfulness are coming into the athletic realm now, where we're seeing that the human can develop in a way that's aside from how many miles you're putting on your bike and on your shoes. Yeah. So I'm big on cold therapy. We can segue into that if we want.
What kind of cold therapy you do? Because this is also something, this may be very beneficial and even proven in research for males and testosterone, but for females suffering from depletion of estrogen, progesterone, and amenorrhea, you actually want to avoid some of those extremes, even with cold thermogenesis and whatnot. You want to keep the body at more of a homeostasis. So I tend to advise avoiding those things for my females when we're dealing with a similar thing,
Yeah. I think foundmyfitness.com, Rhonda Patrick, she has a 26-page report on the benefits of cold exposure you can download for free.
I love her, by the way. She's like my resource.
Thumbs up. One of the prominent studies that she touts a lot is a 20-second exposure to 40-degree Fahrenheit water can boost norepinephrine 200-300% for up to 2 hours. So if you're getting a cold shower for 20 seconds, or just getting that hormetic, that super brief stressor, like running down and jumping in the ocean, swimming 3 strokes.
Tis the season, everyone.
Today in the pouring rain. If you're getting the brief
and the rest
hormetic
of the country
stressors.
is like inundated with snow right now.
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't pay attention to the news. Thank you.
Huge storm.
That thing there's no way that's going to be a super bad deal for anybody to do once in a while. 20 seconds, right? My practice is a little more devoted. I don't see any risks that I've thought about with the female concerns you have, but like a quick exposure to cold, or if you prefer, because the benefits, her sauna paper and her cold therapy paper and the science behind that, very, very similar. So a lot of people, for some reason, have more appeal. I have this Almost Heaven sauna, it's called. It's incredible. It's a home use barrel sauna that's in my backyard, 6 feet wide, 6 feet long, fits 4 people or 2 people lounging. And so I have the chest freezer for the cold plunge and the sauna.
Oh, you got
and
that set up.
Without exception, people are more interested in going in the sauna than the cold tub.
I mean, is that even a kind of a no-brainer?
Yeah.
I remember talking to Ray Cronice. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's this crazy scientist
he's
dude.
Awesome. Lost all that weight just getting cold all the time.
Yeah. So he, this was even back when, speaking of that Tahoe Ironman that I was talking about, and leading up to that, we knew it was going to be cold either way. And he always told me to end, like if you're going to do the cold shower thing, end on cold, don't end on hot, because that kind of negates some of the effects. I don't really know the actual science on that, but is that what Rhonda says in that, what you're talking about, the 20-second exposure? Is that the end of it, or can you go straight back to like hot as shit after that and like recover your body?
I like to re-warm naturally after my cold tub. So I go into
artificially with more hot water.
Unless you're cold, right? If you're shivering, and what happens, you get a delayed response. So I go into this chest freezer from Home Depot, 15 cubic foot, and it's supposed to be filled with meat. It's a top opening chest freezer. I fill it with cold water and I keep it at 34 to 36. But every day I go in, and I go in first thing in the morning, no matter what the weather is, whatever. And I do 20 deep diaphragmatic breaths. So that's my meditation, because I'm very successful meditating in that tub, and I think of nothing but my breath. And a couple times someone has come out and tried to chat with me. Hey, what are you doing in there? Freezing. Right away. Another time I was listening to a podcast. I'm like, I'm going to keep this on. So I put the phone on the side and was listening to the podcast. And I started to get shivery and kind of panic in the cold water. But now I plunge in there. I hold my breath when I go in. So I'm in there maybe 15 seconds underwater in 32-degree Leonardo DiCaprio Titanic water. And then I emerge. And I'm so happy to catch a breath that I don't even care it's cold. But I commence these 20 deep diaphragmatic breathing cycles. It used to require 3 minutes, and now I can go 6 or 7 minutes in the summer, maybe 5 minutes now in the winter. And I get out. You always get out before you're freezing or truly, experiencing adverse effects of cold.
Right.
So it's overcoming. It's like mind over matter, where I'm breathing through the cold, just like the Wim Hof stuff that's become so popular now. There's no problem for me. Thank you for listening to the show. We would love your feedback at getoveryourselfpodcast@gmail.com. And we would also love if you could leave a rating and a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a hassle. You have to go to desktop iTunes, click on the tab that says ratings and reviews, and then click to rate the show anywhere from 5 to 5 stars. And it really helps spread the word so more people can find the show and get over themselves, because they need to. Thanks for doing it. This is Brad. I want to tell you about my life-changing acquisition of a personal home-use sauna. I have a 6x6 barrel sauna in my backyard, ready-made heat therapy, a fabulous unit from Almost Heaven. Check out their website. You can very affordably order your own sauna for installation in your backyard or garage and have a sauna experience, the fabulous health benefits accruing from exposure to hot temperatures. Get that sweat going. These are beautiful traditional dry barrel saunas where you splash the water on the rocks, go in there and relax. It's become a social centerpiece at my home. People traveling from far and wide to come check out the barrel sauna, turn the dial or set the timer and walk in to 200 degrees in the Caribbean seas. For some reason, people like to come to the sauna more than my cold tub. Go figure. Check out almostheaven.com and their beautiful natural wood designs, and pretty soon, surprisingly affordable, you will be in the home sauna business.